Greetings, it is I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time for my History of Magic the Gathering, where I talk about each of these sets, give a little bit of information on them, and introduce you to them through their historical context. Let's continue our discussion with Deckmasters 2001. So this was released on December of 2001, and it had 122 cards. This was a box set. It unfortunately had no new keywords. It had two decks. One designed by Richard Garfield, the creator of Magic the Gathering, and the other by John Finkel, one of the top Magic the Gathering players at the time. Now, both of these decks were designed to play against each other and had a certain number of rules. They pulled upon alliances and Ice Age for the cards that you could select from, keeping with the reprint policy of Magic of how they were talking about limiting numbers of reprints and especially more powerful cards. They also only had 4 rares in the entire decks, could not have more than 2 copies of rares, and couldn't have any color hoser spells, basically directly targeting color spells. Now, it often returns to the Deckmasters brand, but a Deckmasters brand was never made. No follow-ups to this were ever created. It was basically preparing its way for more, but never happened. Now, it contained 2 60 white bordered card decks, each with 2 premium cards associated with it. It also had 2 spin down life counters, a book that was full color that had rules, tips for the various decks, information like that, little biographies of various people, a 10 by 14 inch poster featuring Lyrgoth versus Goblin Mutant, and a metal tin for Deckmasters that could hold 700 sleeved cards or 11 60 card sleeve decks. It was made to be able to hold the big metal tin you could put your cards into. Now, Garfield's deck was a red-green one made to get out really large, big creatures, but then to kind of clear the way for them by eliminating creatures with red spells, burning opponents' creatures away, so that you clear the way for your big old green creatures to come smashing in with. On the other hand, Finkel's deck was a black-red deck that was designed to get hard to deal with creatures out. Basically, creatures that you put them out, not easy to deal with, to use black elimination spells to clear the way for them, and if you had the opportunity, burn your opponent directly with some red, and also you could use necropotence if you really needed to get a boost, and you got it out in your hand. Now, some of the cards you want to talk about when you talk about the set, we'll start with the 4 premium ones. There was Icy Manipulator. I've talked about Icy Manipulator before. For 1 mana and tapping it, you can tap target artifact, creature, or land. It's a pretty decent one in general. There was also Incinerate, which was which is a premium card. You dealt 3 damage to target creature or player. If a creature was dealt damage this way, it cannot be regenerated this turn. There was also Lyrgoth. Well, Lyrgoth had Star plus 1 power and toughness. So effectively, Star was equal to all the creatures in all the graveyards added together, and of course that was for its power. Toughness would be that plus 1. And the last premium one was Necropotence. You skip your draw step. If a card should be put in your graveyard, it's exiled instead, but you may pay 1 life to exile the top card of your library face down at the beginning of the next end step. Any cards exiled like this with Necropotence go to your hand. So you don't draw. If something goes to your graveyard, it goes away forever, but you can put a bunch of cards using life away, get them into your hand. Necropotence is generally pretty good. Now let's talk about the rares from these sets that I haven't talked about with the premiums yet. There's Elkin Bottle. 3 tap, exile the top card of your library. Until the beginning of your next upkeep, you may play that as if it's in your hand. Though if you do not play it by the time it becomes that next upkeep, you have to put it in your graveyard. Jokul Cups. Destroy all artifacts, enchantments, creatures, and lands that cannot be regenerated. It's a big old board wipe in red. Clarkson Forest. It is a red-green playland. You tap it for a colorless mana, or you could tap it, get a red or a green in your mana pool, take a damage. Boldovian Horde. It was a 5/5 creature for 4 mana, so it's really good. When it came into play, you had to discard a card at random from your hand, or bury it. Basically, put it in the graveyard. It cannot be regenerated. Sulphurous Springs. Another painland. You tapped it for a colorless, or you could tap it for a red or a black, and of course take a damage after you do that. Underground River. This is another painland again. Tap it for a colorless, or you could tap it for a black or a blue, and you would take a damage. Think about that. There might be some blue in this deck here, in one of them. Then, of course, there was Pillage. Destroy target artifact or land. It cannot be regenerated. A pretty good one for getting rid of artifacts or lands. Bounty of the Hunt. You may exile a green card from your hand rather than paying its mana cost. It gave 1 target creature +1/+1. another target creature +1/+1, and another target creature +1/+1. These technically could be the same creature. So you can give one creature +3/+3, one +2/+2, and another +1/+1, or spread them out over the course of 3 creatures. Lava Burst does X damage to target creature or player. Damage dealt by Lava Burst cannot be prevented. Very interesting one there. You cannot prevent the damage that Lava Burst would be dealing. Elvish Bard. It was a lore creature. All creatures able to block it do so. So of course, lore creatures, doing a little jump back in here. Yavame Ants, a 5/1 trample haste with a cumulative upkeep of 2 green. So for relatively cheap, you could throw at these ants and basically throw them at your opponent to smash them very quickly and efficiently. Abyssal Spectre, a 2/3 flyer that when it dealt damage, combat damage to an opponent, they had to discard a card. Pretty decent one for the card discard creatures. Goblin Mutant, a 5/3. It couldn't attack an opponent if it had an untapped creature of power 3 or more. It also could not block a creature with power 3 or more. So interesting, it really wasn't great at attacking or blocking, but if you get the opportunity to, sneak Goblin Mutant in. Pyroclasm deals 2 damage to every creature in play. Always a decent one. Limdul's High Guard, a 2/1 first strike for a colorless and a black, you could regenerate it. So that's it for today. I introduced you to Deckmasters 2001. 2 interesting decks designed by 2 major names in Magic at the time period. The creator of it, who would always be major, and of course one of the more famous players who did great things during that time period and was known for, well, being a great player and all, and winning a lot of tournaments. So of course they looked to him, one of the top ones. They thought they would, of course, come back to this series and introduce new people making new decks that would probably be going against each other, maybe from different periods of time than just the Ice Age/Alliances sort of block of 2 sets of cards. It's hard to say, really, because this line that they were thinking of establishing didn't continue after here. This is the only Deckmasters that exists. So it's interesting to see that they were attempting to bring in an idealism of what their top minds would do with cards, to basically show off the best of what decks could be. And since then, some of the decks we see that they put out are put this way, rather than just be more beginners things. They're seen to be elite and able to go against each other. And we can see the Deckmasters, in a way, did continue, though, with the Duel Deck series. Now, granted, it's not created by anybody special, but they are made to play against each other. So this is the first example of them truly being pretty decent decks doing that. Very interesting. But regardless, if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows you support the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link description below. If you want to check out some other great people that do Magic the Gathering content, I can recommend my friends in the multiverse, Card Bazaar, They Said We Said, and of course Tasty Snackies. They do some great Magic the Gathering content. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.